You know, with all of the things that have been going on here in the United States recently, I've had a lot of things on my mind. And one of the things that tended to pop into my head was all of this celebration of Charlie Kirk, who was felled by the bullet from his killer during an event at a college in Utah. And since that time, he was I guess, a podcaster or right wing enthusiast, and he espoused some views that some may say were racist. I say that. He questioned the intelligence of black people, called some prominent black women, saying they didn't have the brain processing power to be taken seriously unless they took a position from a white man. He said if he saw a black pilot getting ready to pilot a plane he was on, he would be thinking, boy, I hope this guy's qualified. Said women should basically stay home and raise kids, not worry about being in corporate America. Said being a partner at a law firm is not such a great thing. Um, the country was better off when it had stricter immigration laws and the amount of immigrants flowing in were at their lowest levels. Espoused views anti, you know, gay, anti-transgender, and on and on and on. But since his passing, he's been lionized, almost sanctified by the right. Even a popular late night TV host was pulled off the air for making what sounded like an innocuous joke about the whole situation. So the things that crossed my mind as I listened to this, particularly since I just turned 67 years old, and I remember back to when Jim Crow was enforced, because I went to a Jim Crow school initially for my first 2 years of education. And I started thinking, how were my ancestors treated during slavery? And by the way, this is my book, One Eighth of a Man, Hate for the Skin I'm In. You can check that out on Amazon.com. I started thinking about the children. I mean, I was in Jim Crow. They were in slavery when slavery was in existence in the United States. And I grew up in a rural area. We used to raise livestock. Right behind our house, we had a fenced-in area where we raised pigs and hogs. And we had a trough that they fed from. A lot of times we would feed them some mixture we call slop, which was basically leftover food that we didn't eat, mixed with water. I'd go out to the fence, pour it into the trough, and yell, "Suey pig." Usually they would see it and run to the trough. They'd bury their noses in there and start eating, pushing each other out of the way to get the food. And I started thinking, how were slave children fed? And I ran up on something that Frederick Douglass had written in his autobiography. He said oftentimes they were fed in a trough, just like the pigs. They had some corn mush, solution they would mash up, bring it out, pour it into that trough, and do some kind of a farm type call to let the black slave children know that the food was in the trough. And they would run to the trough and basically fight over the food. They might have a clamshell that they would use, or some kind of a flat shingle or something, or their hands to try to grab that food and eat it. And oftentimes the kids were pretty malnourished, so they were really fighting for that nourishment. So when my birthday came, I had ordered something. I ordered an African cane. Okay, it was was made in Africa. My grandfather had a cane. Well, it was actually a walking stick, an African walking stick. Got an elephant, lion's head. And I wanted something directly from Africa because to me it symbolized the disconnect of time from when my ancestors were free people in their home country to when they were brought to the United States and other areas around the world as slaves. And they went from free people to become animals. And I say in my book, slavery that Trump and others don't want us to know the true nature of, and don't want their children to know the true nature of. Slavery was human husbandry, which is the farming and ranching of human beings, raised like animals, raised like domestic pigs, cows, what have you. We were not people. We were livestock, okay? Now, we were livestock that the master knew were human beings. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going to the slave quarters to lay down with the female slaves, which many of them had children by. So they knew these were people just like they were. But as long as they could keep them under the thumb of slavery, they had no chance to share in the bounty of the United States of America. So here we are all these years later and centuries later. And I live next door to people that back in those days may have been my master. And that is the anger point. That is the point of someone saying the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the worst pieces of legislation ever. And this individual was being lionized, said it created a permanent DEI situation. And I'm wearing the shirt, I am DEI, dedicated, educated, and intelligent. Nobody gives you anything in this world anymore. Nobody stocks their corporations and workplaces with people to hit some magic number, or you don't go get a job handed to you because you fit some quota. That's not happening. Matter of fact, DEI benefits the most white women. So all of the myths, all of the other, talking points that they hang their hats on, right now, with what's going on with the lionization of Charlie Kirk, who's a person I barely heard of when he was struck down on that college campus. I had to do research. And when I did the research, all this stuff came up. I went, wow. But then, the near sanctification of this individual, I'm going, what is going on? But I figured out what is going on. He's being used to cleave finer lines in our society. He's been used to promote what they're calling a religious revival, so to speak. And they separate the words and the apparent hate speech and racism out. If you bring it up, you're being disrespectful, or you are celebrating his death, which neither one of those is true. And then they had the huge rally, the memorial service, 2 days ago, a huge football stadium. And it sounded like, if you converted the film to black and white, You may have thought you had gone back in time to some period leading up to World War II. I'm not going to call any names because people get sensitive. So, my summation is we are being force fed a massive crap sandwich with extra mayo on top to try to make it edible. Because once you peel back the layers, it don't matter how much sweetener they put on this sandwich, how much, how many condiments, lettuce, tomatoes, whatever. It doesn't matter how much they put on this sandwich. At the core of it is crap. And crap is going to be crap no matter how you dress it up. Because once you finally get down to the core and that crap hits your taste buds, you know what kind of sandwich you're being force fed. Because that rally they had, those clips are going to be their election talking points and commercials. We had the President of the United States get up at that rally and said, unlike Charlie Kirk's widow, he didn't love his enemies. He hated his opponents, and he had ill will for them. Think about it, the president. So, I got this cane in remembrance of the slave children that were made to eat from a trough just like pigs. But now, their descendants are living next to the descendants of their former slave masters. Man, isn't freedom, education, and motivation a wonderful thing?